All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to all the parents and guardians who are joining us today to get a little more information about our student safety training that's scheduled for this Thursday, February 2nd. I'm Superintendent. I'm Superintendent John Antonucci, and I'm joined here by several faculty and staff of the North Attleboro Public Schools. And I'm just going to do a quick set of introductions. I'm just going to go through them. We have Meg Camire, who's our Director of Student Services, Michelle McEwen, who's our Assistant Superintendent, Janine Magliacco, Roosevelt Principal, Brianne Kelher, Principal of the middle school, Sarah Bateson, who's the Adjustment Counselor at NAMS, Katie Clark, Adjustment Counselor at the Martin School, Brittany Nirenberg, who's an Adjustment Counselor at the elementary level, AMVET in Roosevelt, and Mary O'Connell, who's the Adjustment Counselor at Community. And we're all here today to run through a series of slides, try to answer some of the questions that we've received before today, and then give you opportunity to ask questions if you still have them after the presentation. So with that being said, I'm going to move on. So much like we do with, for example, our math curriculum or our English curriculum, we also think very thoughtfully and carefully about major initiatives like student safety. And here's just a really quick graphic about our review cycle, if you will, on student safety. And when I came to the district, I've been in the district about 1.5 years, we really started to dig deep and do a self-assessment on our current level of safety training and our current safety protocols. And we very quickly learned a couple things. One is that we have had little or no recent training as it relates to student safety and student safety, period. But the second thing we learned was that our current protocols were fairly outdated. And when I say outdated, I'm talking about maybe 10 years or so, and I'll explain. Specifically, we hadn't really caught up to the current thinking and current practice around violent intruder training. Said another way, we're talking about things like school shootings and school shooters. And it's really stressful to talk about these things. It causes a lot of anxiety. But I have to say, you know, a violent intruder in a school and the threat of a school shooter is not an abstract concept anymore. All you have to do is pay attention to the news to know that we must be prepared. We have to be prepared as a community for the worst case scenario. And when I talk about our protocols being out of date, what happened about 12 or 13 years ago on the heels of two major tragedies. One was the Virginia Tech University shooting, and the second was Sandy Hook. And what we realized, what the law enforcement community and the experts realized, was that our traditional trainings around lockdowns, meaning when there's an intrusion or a threat, when we were locking students and staff down, that in fact it was leading to more casualties in these very severe incidents. And so what changed especially after the Sandy Hook shooting, what changed was, well, really what it led to was a new way of thinking. And I'm going to put it under the umbrella of something that we refer to as run, hide, and fight. And we're talking about a protocol called the 4 Ls, which is just another way of saying run, hide, and fight. But the idea around the new protocols was to give people a choice.
I have it all back.
Was to have people kind of analyze the situation and give them the option of not just locking down and being a kind of a sitting target, but escaping if possible, or fighting back if possible. So that run, hide, fight protocol, that has been around for at least 10 years. North Attleboro was not up to date on that. So we really needed to make sure that we were up to date with the current protocols, which leads me to today, which the training block here. We trained our full faculty and staff on the first day of school this year, August 30th. We trained 650 staff, and obviously a natural extension, and here we are at this stage of the school year, was to train our staff, now train our students. Now what the student training will look like obviously is much different than when training adults. But this is a must do. There's no way around it. We have to be prepared for even the worst case scenario, as much as we don't want to think about it. But we want to do it in a really thoughtful and careful way. And I'm very proud of the work our staff has done to put together this series of trainings. I think it is well thought out. I think it is completely age appropriate, but that doesn't mean that there aren't questions and that there aren't concerns from the parent community. So we wanted to take a pause based on the questions we have heard and give you an opportunity today for us to run through, generally speaking, the presentation that students are going to see on Thursday, but also give you time to answer any questions. At the end of the day, this training, while it's new, we want it to become habit, just like we do with fire drills. Fire drills are a habit in schools, and they weren't always, right? We need to add this violent intruder training to our repertoire to make sure that our students and our staff are prepared. And we basically need to have this type of training become routine so that in the event of something serious that we're ready to address it. So I'll leave it with that, and I'm going to turn it over to, I'm not sure who the next speaker is, but Meg, take it over.
Yeah, I can jump in. So we're going to head over to Mrs. Kelleher, who's going to run us through, the principal at North Attleboro Middle School, who's going to run us through the slide deck that if your children are in grades 2 through 8, they will be seeing. And I just wanted to add, while John mentioned we trained over 650 staff in August, North Attleboro Police Department was also a big partner in that presentation that day, and even North Attleboro Fire in terms of their awareness of where we were up to in our training. So Brianna, I'm going to head over to you next. Brianna, you want to unmute yourself, please? We can.
Sorry, I did hit my unmute, but it didn't actually unmute. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to present to you the first half of the presentation that has been set for grades 2 through 8. The part that I'm going to talk to you about is almost a review for most students. They're pieces of our safety training that we have worked on with students over the last however many years that they've been in North Attleboro Public Schools. So Meg, if you can get us to the next slide. Yeah, so we start off with our safety trainings regarding fire drills and shelter in places. Every school in North Attleboro at this point has had a fire drill this year, so this will not be new information to students. And then also shelter in place, which we talk to students about. Shelter in places when there might be something going on outside that we just want to make sure that we know where every student is, every staff member is, and that they are in their classrooms. They're still learning, the school day is still happening. There's just no one outside and there's no one really moving about the building. So we'll start off the training by talking about those two things, because those would be more common drills that students have participated in. As we move into the next slide, we start to introduce the 4 L's. And as a part of this training, the first 2 L's, which I'll get to in just a second, again, are terms that students have heard before. So our point to students here is that we do not want them to be scared. We want students to be prepared, as Dr. Antonucci said, and make sure that we are prepared for situations, but that we're not scaring students, and letting them know that school is safe, and you just have to make sure that we're all on the same page with this. So to start off with the 4 L's on our next slide, these are the 4, and this went home with a little bit more detail to all families from each school principal. The idea of locate, lockdown, leave, and live. I'm going to talk to you just quickly about the first 2, locate and lockdown, and then Principal Magliocca from Roosevelt is going to talk to you about the leave and live portion of the presentation. So basically each slide as we go forward is pretty much exactly what was on that one summary slide that we sent home to families last week when we received questions about the training. So the locate piece, again, familiar to students. This is with any situation that students may be in their classroom, the hallway, the cafeteria, the gym, the auditorium, or outside the building. And no matter where they are, they need to get a sense of where in location to them a dangerous intruder may be so that they can respond in a safe way. Most often the response will be with their teachers directing them. But in some situations, if a student is in the bathroom or not with a teacher, they need to know this information. They may hear an announcement over the loudspeaker. They may hear people letting them know that there is an intruder in the building. The next one, again, Dr. Antonucci alluded to, but is the idea of lockdown, that wherever you are in the building, you may need to find a place to lock down, which means to seek shelter in a locked room if possible and stay out of the intruder's view. A teacher may help students, again, if they're in the classroom setting, by locking the doors to the classroom and asking students to be quiet. The teacher may ask for a student's help to put items in front of the classroom doors, and again, to remember to be quiet when they're helping. And then if they're not in the classroom or near a staff member, that they should look for a place to hide on their own as opposed to trying to get back to the classroom. So again, the idea of locate and lockdown are two pieces of the training that we've discussed in past years. I am going to turn it over to Principal Magliocca from Roosevelt, who is going to pick up from here with the ideas of leave and live.
Thank you, Brianne. Good afternoon, everybody. So as Brianne said, the next two L's, leave and live, are the two L's that our students are not familiar with at this time until we start to train them. And as Dr. Antonucci said, this is going to become routine. It's going to become something our students are introduced to frequently, so they will learn it. And one of the things that we're committed to is helping them learn it in the most developmentally appropriate way that we can find. So leave. I'm going to talk about leave in a couple of different ways. First, I'm going to start by saying something that Brianne just said, which is that almost all of the time, the students are with a teacher or with an adult, somebody who is going to basically take on a leadership role in the situation and help students understand whether or not they should leave an area or leave the building. There could be an instance, as Ms. Kelleher said, that a student could be in the bathroom or could be in a hallway. And so we want to prepare them from that viewpoint as well, from being by themselves and having to make a decision. But as I said, at the elementary level, especially where it's a little bit more of a controlled environment, students, for the most part, are with their teachers. During the training, the teachers were basically empowered as leaders of their students and each other and for themselves. So basically for leave, we're telling students if they're in an open space that they should leave that area. That could be a hallway, that could be a lobby area. They may have to exit the building completely, or they may choose to move into a space that can be locked and secured or to hide. If there is an easily accessible escape path, we want them to use that to leave whatever area that they are in. We're also going to be telling students that if a staff member tells them to leave the building, to run in a zigzag pattern, which is different from the fire drills. Fire drills, they go out in single file in a very orderly yet efficient way. The running from the building in a zigzag pattern is a more unpredictable way of running away. So we'll be talking to the students very concretely about that. If you're not with a staff member and you can safely leave the building, run away from the building in a zigzag pattern. So again, if a student is alone and they're not with a teacher or a staff member, then, and they make the decision to leave, we want them to continue to run far away from the building and again in that zigzag pattern. And we want them to run far away from the building and find an adult. The next one, again, students are not familiar with this L as they are with the locate and lockdown and with our other safety drills, and that one is live. Basically, what we're really teaching our students here is that if they do come into contact with an intruder in the school or anywhere for that matter, if they're out in public, that we want them to use whatever is available within their control to get themselves into a more safe and sheltered position. Some of the things we're going to talk to students about that they can use: staplers, computers, books, book bags, calculators. These are things that are in our school. They may have a staff member who directs them to take on some of those things. And again, I'm going to go back to something that John said. This is not something that we want to be talking to our students about, but we know it's something we have to talk to them about. It's a must do.
Janine, can I just interrupt for a moment? I'm sorry, this is John. I meant to say earlier, if you have questions during the presentation, I'd encourage you to use the chat feature on the Zoom screen, and I'll monitor the questions on the chat, and we'll answer them before we get off. If you can't use the chat or don't want to use the chat for some reason, we'll make sure we leave time for questions at the end. Sorry about that. Thank you.
John, I'd just like to say one more thing before we go to the next slide, and that is one of the things that Synergy, the company that worked with us for the professional development at the beginning of the year, talked to us about is how when they based the 4 L's in terms of like what was going to be taught to students, to faculty and staff, was that this information is based very heavily on that analysis piece of past unfortunate incidences in schools. And what was the most effective way for people to act within that organization in the very unfortunate situation that a school shooting or a dangerous intruder would enter the building. So this here is just a summary. This is what you actually received when you were first emailed. Of the 4 L's, the locate, lockdown, leave, and live. And then the reason for the summary video, summary slide within this portion of the presentation is to just bring students back. As John said, we want to make it routine. We want to make it something that they become familiar with. So bring them back to what those 4 L's were that we just taught.
Janine, before we head into some of the questions, I'm wondering if we want to specifically talk about leave and live as it relates to what some of our school counselors have adapted for some of our students in terms of unpacking that language.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Kamiri. So one of the things that we talked about, in particular at the elementary level, is how we do have young students in front of us who we are going to be presenting this information to. The school counselors at the elementary level are very expert at knowing when it's appropriate to introduce something like a social story to our students about a topic that might be hard to present or that might be difficult for students to process. So we did actually have one of our school counselors, Mrs. Nirenberg, who's with us today, work with one of our other providers to create a social story. I'm going to ask her right now just to talk to you about that, what that looked like, and also why it's important to have social stories on hand for situations when we might be teaching a new topic that might be challenging for students.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Magliocco. So as Janine said, we can use social stories for a variety of situations. This is just one situation that we're using. It's a tool to help us that we can explain social situations to the children and how to best respond to them. Like I said before, though, you can use it and adapt it to all different environments. So we just decided to take one just as another tool and strategy for the teachers and for children to feel safe and supported.
Great. So I think at this point then, I know, Dr. Antonucci, we had already received some questions specifically from parents. So I have a couple of the questions up on this screen now, and whether it's any of our principals or some of the school adjustment counselors, we can hopefully go through these. And then again, if there are additional questions that parent or guardians might have, they can enter them into the chat bar.
Yeah, Meg, we do have a few. I'll go through them after this.
Great, awesome. So the first couple, I'm wondering if either Mrs. Kelleher or Mrs. Magliocco can sort of review or remind again who will be presenting the information, what kind of language will be used. Again, we showed the grades 2 through 8 presentation, but thinking of our kindergarten first graders, our middle school, or excuse me, our high school students. And then what's the format at which the information will be presented? Is it a full school assembly classroom? So Ms. Kelleher, why don't we start with you first, and then we'll go to Mrs. Magliocco.
Sure. So at NAMS, this presentation will be given in morning homeroom with a member of the teaching staff, the homeroom teacher, and a classroom of students. It's not in a full large assembly. And one of the major reasons why we created this presentation as we did is so that the same information gets out similarly to students on that morning. So it will be this presentation. Obviously, some students may have questions, which may change each room a little bit depending on the conversation, but pretty straightforward with regards to the information on the slide deck and being delivered at the same time in the same way.
And I can add on to that as well. So at the elementary level, the teachers themselves, the classroom teachers will be the ones that will be presenting the presentations to the students. Because of the fluidity of the schedule at the elementary level with specialists and all that, and we do want the classroom teachers to be the ones delivering it. We're giving the classroom teachers the choice as to when they think the best time of day is to deliver the presentation to their students. Many of the classrooms have paraprofessionals in them, special educators, etc. The classrooms are fluid and we have a lot of folks coming in and out all day. So there may be more than one teacher in the classroom at that time, especially if it's in a co-taught classroom. There would definitely be a special educator in the room at that time. In terms of the language that will be used, I mean, you basically saw it, the 4 L's, and we do use the word intruder, dangerous intruder. We don't get into, as you can see from the slides, discussing violent acts or any kinds of specific reference to school shooter or shooting. We really stick to that term, dangerous intruder, so that the students know what we mean. At the elementary level in particular, we may have to do some defining of the word intruder, especially at the kindergarten and first grade level. Beautiful thing about kindergarten and first grade teachers, and even obviously 2nd through 5th, I'm going to advocate for all elementary, is and just like at middle school and high school, they know how to reach the children and how to meet them where they're at. They understand the kids that are in front of them. They understand that they, the developmental learning ability and the age of each student has to be considered. The teachers are expert at looking at what material they have and knowing what they must do to teach. But they will not be presented with any kind of violent reference or any kind of situation where the students will become scared, but we will use the word intruder. And again, we will not be doing it in any kind of assembly in the classrooms.
Great. Thank you. John, I'm just going to keep going through these next questions before we hit the chat bar questions
Okay.
for folks to answer. So the next one, I think we'll go to some school counselors. It talks about students who might have anxiety or have experienced trauma. What are the additional supports in place if this training were to trigger them? So really great question, something we want to chat a little bit about. So I'm going to start with Katie Clark, who's one of our school adjustment counselors over at Martin. And then we're going to ask Sarah Bateson, who's our middle school counselor on the call, to also join in. So Katie, do you mind helping us answer that question for us?
Sure, thank you, Meg. So in North Attleboro Public Schools, there's mental health providers at all schools from K to 12. So we're very lucky in that way, and they'll be available the day of the training to speak to any students who are having adverse feelings or big feelings surrounding this topic. What we will do is validate the feelings, because these feelings are important and this is a very serious subject, but reinforce safety in a trauma-informed way. This is a response to a dangerous person where we have so many safety precautions that we take at the school. So reinforcing that for students, especially at the young elementary level, will be an important way for them to feel comfortable and safe remaining in school, because we have so many preventative measures for them here at school. And we'll be available to provide any clarification of any meanings or feelings or misunderstandings that the students may have taken from the presentation. Additionally, teachers have experience in many resources to prepare themselves to deliver the presentation in a very sensitive and age-appropriate manner. So we'll be available for all students after the training.
Thanks, Katie. And I think Dr. Antonucci mentioned it, but we've gone through this training with our staff too. So obviously they've had the chance to preview it, anticipate some students that might struggle with that and sort of prepare for that. So thanks for adding that. Ms. Bateson at the middle school, do you mind adding anything again, just sort of in terms of what Mrs. Clark spoke to around responding to students who might be triggered by the presentation?
Sure. At the middle school level, similarly to what Katie had just shared, our teachers are often tasked with assisting students in acknowledging and validating and helping them regulate their emotions no matter what the trigger is. So if a student does have a big reaction to the safety presentation this week, all of our school counselors at the middle school level will be available during the time of the presentation. And then we're also going to make sure that we are available throughout the day. If a student might need help within the classroom setting, or if they might need additional time to ask questions or process the presentation one-on-one with one of our school counselors.
Great, thanks, Sarah.
I'd even, if I can interject, Meg, I would
Absolutely,
even
Meg.
go so far as to say that I know that some of the teachers, you know, already have concerns about it and have asked counselors to be present while they're presenting this information so that we can, you know, help answer questions and or, you know, work with students who may be triggered.
Right, thanks so much. I appreciate it. The next question then we'll go to is, and I'll go back to Mrs. Keller and Mrs. Magliocco. Are children expected to learn and implement these strategies? So kind of specifically those last two L's, if either of you want to speak to what's the expectation on implementation of strategies, what that means. And we've covered it, but just sort of a
So
Brianna, go ahead,
okay.
Brianna.
So I was just going to say at this time, this is where we're going with our training is the presentation that we're sharing right now. There will be further training to come as we move forward, but we haven't made any decisions on the implementation of it as far as a drill is concerned yet. But we want to make sure that students have the information and that they are prepared in the event that something like this were ever to happen. But we have it, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, we have done lockdown drills in the past. Students who have been in North Attleboro Public Schools for many years or quite a few years have done those practices already previous to this year.
Yeah, sorry, but I almost cut you off, Brianne. I can take it from here. Just what Brianne said, absolutely, and the same as at the elementary level, that in the past, students have learned how to lock down. So, you know, at the elementary level, not only is it important that the students know, but the teachers know. One of the things I think I said earlier is that synergy when training our entire faculty and staff, I think John said 650, that they said is that they empower us as leaders of our students in these situations. So, you know, that we will not be practicing it as Brianne said at this time, but the repetitive nature and the routine nature of presenting these slide decks to, these slides to the students will be something that is very, very important in terms of them being able to process it, understand it, and remember it. And I'm going to share one more thing, and that is one of our colleagues, who is the principal of the high school, has likened this approach to almost similar to when you're on an airplane and you're being presented with evacuation procedures on an airplane, and how you're not practicing it right then and there. But if something were to occur on an airplane and all of a sudden certain things started to happen in your environment, that you would rely on what you learned at the beginning of that. We want to give multiple opportunities for that learning.
And I think if I could just add to that, the importance of this training is that it's extremely situational, dependent on the location of a student, whether it's in the classroom or in another place. In the past, the trainings have focused on lockdown specifically, which would most often be if you were in the classroom, and then other students would have to make a decision. So the preparedness of this is really to kind of give students information for their particular situation.
Great. Thanks. We're going to move to the next question, just to think a general curiosity question, right? It wouldn't be unusual for do discussions about school violence and weapons come about by doing a training like this? So Mary, do you mind if I start with you over there at community school, and then we'll go to Sarah Bateson?
Sure. So if the kids do start talking about it, because, kids do have knowledge of prior, schools, then I think that we keep the language simple. Will we be discussing that, in the presentation? No. But I think that, it's important to answer kids' questions because kids actually feel less scared when they get to talk about those things that are scary for them. But obviously in an elementary school, we're going to keep it as simple as possible.
Thanks, Mary. I think it'll be pretty similar in the middle school level as well. The conversations in the classrooms will look different from elementary to middle to high school because we're going to, work with students that are developmentally different. And so although we're going to keep the same information, the way that the students might react and have follow-up questions might be different. And so I think all of the information that is given, teachers are going to follow that up with reassurance, and teachers are going to answer the questions that the students might have. I think students in the middle school level and the high school level might be more vocal in asking those questions. And so that's why we're going to make sure that we have our counseling staff prepared, our teachers are ready, everyone really feels empowered to deliver this confidently to our students.
Thanks. I know we have one more question on the screen, and then Dr. Antonucci will go to you with the chat questions. So this next one about, again, sort of upset, what emotions might this training or topic, if it would bring up emotions to our students? So Mrs. Nirenberg, do you mind sort of tackling that one again, thinking of our younger population, our kindergarten through 5th grade students, how they might respond?
Yeah, absolutely. So with anything, there is a possibility of our children being upset, but North Attleboro does a really great job of supporting kids, not just academic growth, but mental health as well. So we're all going to be supportive, not just the counselors, but the teachers as well. We have the social stories, we have different things that we can do to support the children. And we also have open doors. So kids can come to us anytime they need to. Teachers are welcome to refer them to us as well. And like many of us have said before, we're going to clear our schedules and make sure that we're there to support everyone, including the students and teachers.
Mary or Katie, did either of you want to add to that one too, in terms of just kids feeling upset about the training and maybe even bringing that over in the home setting and parents navigating that?
Right. And if parents, do hear about their student being upset, certainly we're going to be available to talk to both of them. I mean, if a parent wants to come in for an appointment with their child because, or to just give us a call about something that's upsetting to the parent, we're happy to talk to them about that. And if you are aware that your student may be one of the kids, even before seeing this presentation, who might be anxious, then to, let the school principals know, who can let the counselors know, so that, we're prepared or more proactive with that particular child or classroom.
Yes, and additionally, I think that students there could be potential for them to be upset, but I do think that the training was very good for teachers, and teachers are very well versed in this and the procedures. So hopefully that confidence from the staff will show the students and help them feel more comfortable being here at school. And that's what we're looking to reinforce and also validate their feelings.
You want to jump in, John?
Yeah, sure. Let me just start going through some of these chat questions. And there's several that are inquiring about the differences in the K-1 presentation. Several people have asked in slightly different ways. Can someone speak to kind of the significant differences between the K-1? I also want to say before you answer that, we aren't doing this training at our early learning center. The teachers and staff were trained there, but we're not doing it with our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds for obvious reasons. Can someone weigh in on the K-1 training?
Sure, I can, John. That's fine. So one of the biggest differences with the K-1 presentation is that there are more visuals, and they're very child-friendly visuals. There's no visuals of a weapon, no visuals of no videos or anything like that. Visuals of a student or a little character running, that kind of thing. The message is the same with the 4 L's, and you see through the slides that were presented today that the 4 L's are the 4 L's, and we want every child to know them. But it's mostly the visuals that we provided for those younger students that's different. The other thing too, and I'll just say this again too, is our kindergarten and first grade teachers are just outstanding at knowing the developmental age of the students that are in front of them and where they may need to stop and break something down, or where they may need to stop and define something, or talk to the student in a way that they can understand it. And when we did share this with the teachers during a faculty meeting, we talked about that. I actually sat with the kindergarten and the first grade teachers for that reason. And then 2nd through 5th grade, they went off into another area. And we talked about it. We talked about different strategies in terms of knowing their students, what they might need to do. They might need to stop, pause, process it with their student. Things like, what if a student doesn't know how to run in a zigzag because they've never run in a zigzag? The teachers talked about actually saying, well, maybe we could show them how to play a game of zigzag tag, so that they understand what that means. So, developmentally speaking, some ideas came up during the conversation that were really, really helpful, but the presentation in and of itself, it's mostly the visuals.
And quick follow-up to that. Thank you, Janine. Or maybe to some of the counselors, is there anything that parents can do at home, let's say before the training on Thursday, to help them to prepare them for it? Is there a specific tip or conversation starter that parents could use?
I always think that it's helpful to preview information with students because they can anticipate it rather than being surprised by such a topic. So if it felt comfortable in your family previewing the information that you were going to receive important training at school, and to listen and ask questions, just be open and honest as much as your family wants to be surrounding the topic. But I definitely think previewing the training would be very helpful, especially for younger students who might not be as aware of this topic as maybe older students might be.
I can add on to that, Katie, and I do think it's really important to emphasize to your student that schools are typically a really safe place to be. And so we are doing this to be prepared, but to remind your student that typically schools are safe, and that the school staff and everyone in the school building is prepared. And then also know that tell your student that all feelings are okay, and whatever feeling they come home with, to just listen and validate and reassure however they're feeling. There's no right or wrong way to feel after the presentation. And so just really keeping that open line of communication is important.
Thank you. A couple questions about are we going to, and we alluded to it, but are we going to practice these steps, such as running in a zigzag or knowing where to run, for example, out of the building? Short answer is we haven't put that plan in place yet. We do believe that's like a natural extension of the oral training, but at the same time too, we have to do it in a controlled environment. So Ms. Magliacco referred to, for example, maybe practicing zigzag running, in a game of tag. I doubt we'll ever do a full scale run out of the building, leave the premises, for obvious reasons. But at some point we will put some extensions to the training in place. But right now we don't have a plan set in place to do that. Like Ms. Magliacco said, it is very similar and analogous to the training we do on airplanes, where we're not practicing sliding down the slide, but we know it's going to come to us in the event of an emergency. Slightly different with children, but it's a good analogy and something to consider. Couple questions about unrelated to this training, but related to school safety about what are we doing as far as our infrastructure? What are we doing to limit intruders in the building, doors and things like that? And it's a big topic, but I will say that we're taking a real hard look at our school buildings and how to keep them safer. So a couple of things we've done in the last year alone. We have doubled the amount of security cameras that we have. We started at the middle school and high school campus, and we're set to expand our cameras at the elementary levels hopefully this year or next. That's pretty significant expense. So that's something we have to talk about in the context of the school budget and the school capital plan. We've replaced our door buzzer and camera systems at all of our buildings. You may have noticed that over the summer. We're currently reviewing all of our keys and locking protocols around the district. Bear in mind, some of our buildings are 100 years old. They're not really set up for modern day. You might, if you build a new building, you would look at safety and security much more than you would have 100 years ago. But we are looking at things as basic as keys and locks to make sure that we have the ability to lock and all of our doors and make sure they're locked. And we're also expanding. Every one of our employees has an ID card. And we have door card access modules, if you will, at hundreds of doors around the district. We're looking to both make sure those are kind of synchronized with our current needs or aligned with our current needs, but we're also looking to expand them so that we don't get in the habit of, for example, keeping a door ajar simply because it's difficult to kind of come and go from the buildings at all times. So we're taking a hard look at our buildings, a hard look at our infrastructure, and that's an iterative process. It takes money, it takes time, but we are looking at this very holistically, and hopefully we'll make improvements as we go. I'll be glad to answer any more specifics about that. So let's see, let me just run through these questions. Looks like we've covered most of them. Someone asked about, they have a student who's a special ed student, and will they receive reinforcement? I think the short answer, we've answered that, is yes. This is going to be an all hands on deck approach. We will meet the students where they are. Okay, so if a student needs more support, they'll get more support. We're also going to be ready the day of the training to make sure that our counseling staff, our administrative staff, our teaching staff are ready to respond and ready to triage if we need to triage. If a student's anxious or upset, we will be ready. This is a pretty well thought out plan. So to answer the question, yes, we'll meet the students wherever they are. I like to think we do that every day, but it's certainly important in the context of a potentially anxiety-inducing topic like violent intrusion or school safety. Someone asked about communication systems. God forbid something happens. Is there a plan to communicate to families? Short answer is yes. I think you all know, but we have a new website and communication system that we put out this summer. It is really easy to use and I think very effective. So whether it's a basic piece of communication or a piece of emergency communication, we now have the ability to call families, email families, text message families, and also if you have our app, to do a push notification to families. So we thought that was a really important tool for us to have in place, not only for day-to-day, but certainly in the event of emergency. So I'm very confident that our communication system is in pretty good order. I will also say that in the event of a real emergency, that communication spreads like wildfire with text messaging, student to parent or staff, staff to family. So there's a lot of different ways that we can communicate with families. Again, if you have a follow-up to that, if I missed something, please let me know. Give me 1 second. I'm just reading through. Someone asked about, our goal towards having this be routine and kind of repetitive training for students and staff. Will this be yearly or multiple times a year? Don't have a formal plan in place yet. I'd imagine this type of training will have, will reinforce this at least twice a year, if not more. Just like we do fire drills. I think we do 4 fire drills every year. I'd imagine that we'll wrap this type of training in as a refresher, certainly at least twice a year, if not more. So yeah, our goal is to have this be a matter of routine and something that we're all comfortable with. At some point in history, fire drills weren't comfortable for kids. Now it's something we do on a regular basis. And I think that we've covered most of the questions, all the questions actually, in some form or fashion.
Great. So on the last slide, John, I have up, just again, reminding parents and guardians that this Thursday will be our training for students kindergarten through grade 12 plus. We also included a couple of key resources that our school counselors rely on. Also, a thank you to Mary O'Connell, a couple children's literature books, some books, narratives that also are another way to sort of communicate and connect with your student at home. And then moving forward, if parents have any other further questions, would the best suggestion for them to be to contact building principals, and what else do we want to make sure we share out?
Yeah, I think so, Meg. So I do want to leave a couple minutes if people have questions that they haven't been asked in the chat. And I want to come back to one more thing. But yeah, if you have any questions, I mean, again, this is not just for school safety. This is just in general. If you have any additional questions after today, please reach out to your building principal. I think that's the best way. And if he or she can't help you, they'll find you the answer and they'll put you in touch with the right person. But as far as efficiency and effectiveness, why don't you start with the building administrator and let them guide you. Couple more things. Ms. Kamiri is reminding me just in terms of what other things we've done to keep our buildings safer. The first is, and someone referenced it in the question, we do have a school resource officer. It's a full-time police officer that spends time in our building. We have a new SRO this year. His name is Officer Jimmy Morse. He's doing a great job. Officer Morse is really trying to get out to all the buildings, not just the high school and middle school. And I think he's going to be a presence in all of our buildings. So hopefully it just gets routine seeing Officer Morse in the building. So that is a tremendous resource for our community. Long-term, we hope to have another school resource officer. We'll see if ultimately we can make that happen with our budgets, but that's a great resource as well. We also, this year, very quietly, we've added 2 full-time positions, one at the high school and one at the middle school. We call them campus supervisors. And really, it's just another body who is walking around the buildings, being a presence, making sure people in the hallways are supposed to be in the hallways, making sure doors are shut, just being a set of eyes and ears. It has been really, really effective. So those 2 additional positions, we're very thankful that we're able to get them funded in our budget, but it's a big step. Again, we need eyes and ears. Thousands of people come to our buildings every day. And the more, it's sort of the kind of concept of see something, say something. We just want to make sure that things are in order. And the more adults that are paying attention, I think the safer our buildings are going to be. And then finally, people have asked about whether we're going to share these slides. A couple things. One is that this, I should have said this up front, this meeting is being recorded, and I'm going to send out the link to the recording. I'm also finding out that we had a cap, this is a borrowed Zoom account, that we had a cap of 100 on here. We hovered around 97 or 98 through most of the presentation, but I think it's possible that some people maybe at its peak tried to log on and we're not able to. So I apologize for that, but we'll send this link out. But I do think, given the number of questions about sharing the slides, let me talk to the principals. But it's possible that we will share these slides out as well as the social story before Thursday, just to give parents and guardians another tool with their students, but I don't want to give 100% yes on that. I do have to talk to the team about that, but if we can, we will. And then I think that is it. Let me pause though, and then if I've missed something, this would be the time to either raise your hands using the raise hand feature or just unmute yourself and ask a question. If you have one. You might have to shout out, but if anybody has a question, please don't hesitate. I did see one more question came through. Do we have any plans to send home information about safe gun storage for families in our district? That's not something that's a great question. That's not something that I would have, but I will talk to the, we have great partnership with the North Attleboro Police Department. And let me talk to the police department to see if they have a good resource for families that we could share at some point. It's a great question.
Could I just ask a quick question?
Please, yes, go ahead. I don't see
what
you,
do-
but I hear you. Yep.
What is, or what are you telling students who, like I have both of my children have asked, you know, if they're in the bathroom when if something were to ever occur, like, what are you suggesting they do? Like stay in the, because my kids are like, I'm afraid to go to the bathroom because this could happen. And they don't want to be like alone in a bathroom. Are you giving any like suggestions to students? I realize it's probably specific to buildings and, but just so they, like, I don't really know what to say to them other than that could happen. You know, you might want to hide in the stall if you hear something outside that sounds dangerous. Like, I don't know. I just, like, they're actually like avoiding going to the bathroom at time, like a lot.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how, I mean, so I think it's a tough question and it's a great question, but I mean, I really think in the event of a really significant incident in a school, remember the L in our protocol, the 4 L's, which I think is kind of a friendly way to talk about this. The first L is locate. And I think, you know, the student unfortunately is going to have to take some ownership of that type of decision. And I think you said it, if in fact they hear something or see something outside of that bathroom that might be dangerous, they might have to stay in and make that decision on their own. But yeah, in the event of a significant incident, if you are in a bathroom or you are in a locker room, I think the best move would be to stay where you are. I'd have to talk to a consultant, a law enforcement expert about that, but I think that's what the training would tell you. My team, is that accurate? Your interpretation?
I can add to that, John. I can add to that.
Thank you.
Just from the perspective of an elementary principal, and we've been doing, you know, we've been doing the lockdown drills, we've done, you know, the fire drills, et cetera. One of the things that we have told students in the past, if they are in the bathroom, so now let's go to these 4 L's. They've located, there's a situation, they've heard somebody say there's an intruder in the building, they heard an announcement, maybe they hear the intruder. The first thing is that they need to, you know, they need to hide, first of all, from that person until they're sure that they could leave. Okay. So if they were able to leave, we would tell them to take that easy, accessible escape path and leave. But that locate is really, really important until they're sure that they're able to leave. During a fire drill, we tell them you take the safest route out, the closest means of egress, the closest door. That would be the, you know, the path that they would have to take. So I have in the past during lockdown drills have had students in the bathroom, and we have praised them up and down when they go in the bathroom, they pull their legs up and they hide right on that toilet. We've had students who are in the hallway when we initiate lockdown, they have to go right into the closest room, right where they can go. But the hiding piece is really, really important. So leaving an open area or you know, to get into a place where they can't be seen is important. But if they're in the bathroom and they can't be seen, they should remain not seen until they're sure that they could leave. That's the advice that we've given at the elementary level.
Great, thank you so much.
And I would say the same for middle school. We've always told them that this exactly what Principal Magliocca just said, to stand on the toilet, lock the door, so that they're in the stall and can't be seen until they're able to locate if it's a safe route out.
And if I
Thank you.
if I could just quickly add from the counselor point of view, if you're having a student that is having fears like that is preventing them from accessing something like the bathroom, it would maybe be worth reaching out to the counselor or the administration so that they could maybe have a talk with one of our support staff in order for them to feel comfortable at school, because that's the goal is, and especially something like that, we want all students to feel comfortable and safe going to the bathroom. So if that's something you're comfortable with, I would suggest that.
The other thing I would add too, and that, it's part of this presentation, that just reminding your child, and we'll be doing the same thing during the presentation, that it's highly unlikely that this is going to occur and that we are preparing them. We don't want them to be scared. We want them to be prepared, but that it's, that their school is safe. And I heard one of our counselors before say, it's typically a very, very safe place. Unfortunately, and then this is not something you would say to your child, I'm just saying this to you again, unfortunately, because, of the reality that this has occurred in our nation's schools, that we are, preparing our students. But I think at the same time, keeping them, keeping them in the mindset that they're adults, their teachers are here to help them in the situation that they're in. And if they were in the bathroom by themselves, that would be, again, unlikely. But if they were, there's some tools for that too. And, the things that Brianna and I just said.
There's one additional question in the chat, and it's about a parent who said that the child has a bulletproof insert in his backpack, and is there any part of the training that allows them to incorporate it into his safety? And that's such a specific, I've never heard of that, and it's such a specific thing. I'd encourage whoever asked that question maybe just to reach out to the principal to kind of brainstorm a little bit that question. I don't have anything I can share with you in this big group, so I apologize. So please reach out to the principal and ask specifically. It's a really interesting question.
John, I don't mean to take so much airtime, but I want to say something else too that I think will help parents as well. One of the questions was about whether or not the students would be practicing or implementing the protocols. And we said not at this time. However, one thing I want to say is that all 650 faculty and staff did practice these protocols, all 4 of them, including leave. One of the things that was important regarding that was that we would, again, be empowered as leaders of our students to be able to orchestrate whichever choice was being made with our students. I just wanted to add that because I didn't say it before.
Thank you. All right. Well, I really appreciate everybody's time. I'm so pleasantly surprised at how many people logged on to this meeting, which tells us something, right? So we need to be very thoughtful. I think we have been very thoughtful and I'd say careful and about this type of training. There's not an educator who really wants to talk about these types of topics. It's just an unfortunate reality, like Principal Magliocca said. But I can assure you that we have really given this training a lot of thought. We don't do this in a vacuum. Like I said, we have tremendous partnership with our local, not only police department, but fire department, as well as we have an outside consultant who we speak with on a very regular basis to make sure that we're taking an approach that has been vetted or that makes sense, and that the experts believe to be the right move. And I think we've done that. That's not to say we won't modify this and assess how we're doing with it and make changes as necessary. We always will. But I'm glad you all came today. Please, we will share this out by email to the district tomorrow. Please take a peek at these resources. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out. We're here for you, and we want to make sure that your children feel safe in our school buildings. And until every student feels safe, we have a lot of work to do. Any other parting thoughts from the team? Thank you very much.
I think we're good, John. Just another thank you to our school counselors, who I know have been really sort of thoughtful since August, really thinking of how to make sure our students feel safe and supported, and that we're adjusting to their needs to meet them where they're at. So thank you, guys.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.